The Grand King's sealing ceremony gradually came to an end amidst countless sighs and murmurs. Many powerful figures from the great Luo Heaven domain couldn't help but marvel. No one had anticipated that Chen, who had only been a third grade supreme at the beginning, would become the final victor. Among the many exclamations, there was admiration and astonishment, but little of the usual disdain. After all, the true battle prowess Chen had displayed on the King's sealing platform was enough to shock any strong individual from the great Luo Heaven domain. His strength, equivalent to a fourth-grade supreme, coupled with his status as an Earth-grade spirit array master, was already comparable to a fifth-grade supreme. Such a level of power, even in a domain teeming with formidable beings like the great Luo Heaven domain, could be considered outstanding. As a result, while many powerful figures felt envious of Chen for becoming the 10th king of the great Luo Heaven domain, no one harbored dissatisfaction. After all, in any place, strength was paramount, and Chen had proven himself worthy of the recognition and respect from many of the domain's strongest. He was no longer the rookie who had just broken through to the supreme stage a year ago when he first entered the great Luo Heaven domain. Additionally, the Nine Nethers Palace, now standing behind Chen, could no longer be viewed with the same perspective. In the past, it had been the weakest among the 9 kings, often receiving scorn. Yet, over the past year, the Nine Nethers Palace had risen forcefully, its reputation growing stronger. The most important fact now was that it was the only power among the various factions of the great Luo Heaven domain to possess 2 kings. With that in mind, the Nine Nethers Palace would receive double the resources that other factions of the kings were granted. Supported by such vast resources, the growth of the Nine Nethers Palace was nearly inevitable. Perhaps, in the future, the most powerful faction under the great Luo Heaven domain might undergo a shift. Thus, offending Chen and the Nine Nethers Palace now would clearly be the most foolish thing to do. Aside from Chen's victory, Qin Zhong, the lord of Tian Luo City, also reaped considerable benefits from the ceremony. Although he did not directly receive the title of king, Mandala, recognizing his long-standing efforts in the great Luo Heaven domain's battles, promised to assist him in breaking through to the 5th grade supreme. Once he succeeded in this, after the Grand Hunting War, he would be sealed as the 11th king of the great Luo Heaven domain. This boon thrilled Qin Zhong, and the many other powerful figures watching couldn't help but feel envious. Mandala, through this gesture, made it clear that anyone who contributed during the Grand Hunting War would be rewarded. The rewards were so appealing that even the kings themselves were moved, not to mention the other powerful figures. The entire great Luo Heaven domain's morale was instantly boosted, and the battle will surged. Seeing this, Chen couldn't help but silently click his tongue. Mandala's skill in managing subordinates was truly masterful. No wonder she was the sole ruler of the great Luo Heaven domain. After the king's sealing ceremony, Chen stayed in the Nine Nethers Palace to meditate, consolidating his newfound 4th grade supreme power. Aside from that, he focused his energy on training the Nine Nethers guards. With the Grand Hunting War approaching, Chen could sense the increasingly tense and solemn atmosphere spreading across the great Luo Heaven domain. Although the great Luo Heaven domain was the top force in the northern domain, every Grand Hunting War saw the fall of one top faction, which was then devoured by others. The fallen warriors either fled or joined other factions, and such failures were met with mockery and disdain wherever they went. Therefore, the Grand Hunting War had a direct and vital connection to their survival. To avoid becoming homeless wanderers, they had to fight with everything they had to ensure the survival of the great Luo Heaven domain. Thus, in this period, the entire great Luo Heaven domain was preparing for war. The atmosphere was heavy and oppressive. In such an environment, the Nine Nethers Palace was no exception. Even though Chen had now been crowned king, he still oversaw the Nine Nethers Guards. Over the past year, the Nine Nethers Guards had grown exponentially in size. With the abundant cultivation resources now available, the strength of the Nine Nethers Guards had increased by many times compared to a year ago. Chen speculated that during the Grand Hunting War, he might need to rely on the Nine Nethers Guards. Therefore, he couldn't afford to relax and needed to quickly synchronize with his army. Inside a vast training ground in the Nine Nethers Palace, the Nine Nethers Guards, clad in black armor, spread out like a tidal wave. The battle intent surged like a vast black ocean, faintly emanating a growling sound, as if the very heavens and earth were trembling slightly. In front of the 9 nether guards, on top of a massive stone lion, Chen sat cross-legged. His hands formed seals, his eyes half closed. A wave of spiritual energy shot out from his body, directly charging into the boundless ocean of battle intent above the 9 nether guards. His spiritual energy flowed through the vast battle intent, and in order to control the 9 nether guards' battle intent, Chen had to ensure it did not reject him. Previously, Chen's connection with the 9 nether guards had been quite good, but during the recent period, due to his focus on the Dragon Phoenix Heaven and the King Sealing Ceremony, coupled with the expansion of the 9 nether guards, that connection had naturally begun to weaken. Now that he had the time, he intended to take full advantage of it to familiarize himself once more with the bond between him and the 9 nether guards. Chen's cultivation of this connection continued for about 2 hours. His half-closed eyes finally opened, and he gazed at the 9 nether guards, who appeared like a vast black ocean. Above them, the overwhelming battle intent hung heavy like dark clouds, and faint howling sounds reverberated, like thunder, striking fear into the heart. While Chen thought that the strength of any single 9 nether guard was not to be feared, when their battle intent gathered together, even Chen could feel a sense of oppression. From Chen's estimation, with his current strength as a 4th grade supreme, if he could harness the 9 nether guards' battle intent, even a powerful expert who had stepped into 5th grade supreme for years would be easily suppressed. The 9 nether guards are strong, but compared to the great Luo heavenly army, they are still far behind, Chen murmured, staring at the 9 nether guards. Though their strength was growing, there was still a huge gap between them and the great Luo heavenly army, the most powerful force in the great Luo heaven domain. However, because the great Luo heavenly army was so powerful, Chen knew that controlling their battle intent would not be an easy feat. In fact, he suspected even the first commander, Xun'er, might not be able to fully control the battle intent of the great Luo heavenly army. The great Luo heavenly army had nearly 1,000 members, each possessing supreme level strength. If their terrifying battle intent could be harnessed, only the Mandala and the 3 sovereigns could suppress it within the entire great Luo heaven domain. In the Grand Hunting War, it's probably when these armies will truly come into play, Chen muttered to himself. In the Grand Hunting War, individual strength would likely be diminished significantly. Unless one reached the level of the 3 sovereigns, it would be difficult to influence the outcome. Therefore, the overall strength of the army would be crucial in changing the battle's dynamics. This Grand Hunting War won't be easy. Chen looked up at the 9 nether palace, letting out a quiet sigh. With the Grand Hunting War approaching, he could clearly sense the shift in the atmosphere within the great Luo heaven domain. The armies under the command of the various kings were training tirelessly every day. The killing aura was so palpable that even from a distance, it could be felt. Even 9 nether had been in seclusion lately, leaving him to oversee many affairs of the 9 nether palace. Fortunately, he had the help of Tang Bing, the chief steward, or else Chen might have considered running away himself. But this also revealed the brutal nature of the Grand Hunting War. Even within the great Luo heaven domain, danger lurked everywhere. No one could guarantee that after the war, the great Luo heaven domain would still have any presence in the northern domain. Thinking of this, Chen felt a heavy weight settle in his heart. Though it had only been a year since he arrived in the great Luo heaven domain, and despite some people not sitting well with him, this place had offered him protection, allowing his strength to soar in that time. So, Chen felt a certain gratitude toward the great Luo heaven domain. Moreover, Mandala, the domain lord of the great Luo heaven domain, was a cute but secretly calculating little queen. Chen also had quite a fondness for her. Over the past year, Mandala had genuinely helped him a lot. Most importantly, Chen could sense that she had never viewed him as a subordinate. Their relationship had, in many ways, transcended their respective statuses. Therefore, if the great Luo heaven domain were defeated and divided in the upcoming Grand Hunting War, it would be something Chen could never accept. It looks like I have to contribute as much as I can, Chen said with a bitter smile. His relationship with the Xiantian Palace was currently very poor. Mu Chen shook his head, then waved his hand, intending to instruct the 9 nether guards to continue their training. Buzz. However, just as his hand was about to fall, the space before him rippled. A petite figure, dusted and travel-worn, stepped out from the distorted space. She raised her hand, and 10 jade vials shot toward Mu Chen. As the vials flew toward him, a voice, both youthful and tinged with resentment, followed. Here, your 10 types of divine beast essence blood. Damned bastard. I had to scour the entire northern domain's major auction houses to collect these 10 types of divine beast essence blood for you. The vials shot toward him, and Mu Chen quickly reached out to catch them. As he looked at the vials, each containing a different color but all brimming with incredibly pure and powerful spiritual energy, he was momentarily stunned. After a brief pause, he finally looked up. Before him, Mandala stood in the air, though she looked somewhat windblown. Upon noticing Mu Chen's gaze, she pouted. Is this the essence blood of those divine beasts? Did you buy them at an auction? Mu Chen asked, holding the 10 jade vials. He suppressed the excitement in his heart and couldn't help but inquire. Of course. What? Do you want me to go around hunting those divine beasts and kill them one by one? Do you think these divine beasts are just street dogs or stray cats that can be easily squashed? Mandala shot him a sideways glance. It cost me a lot of supreme spiritual liquid to obtain these divine beast essence blood. And this is only because the auction houses gave me a discount, out of respect for my position as the great Luo domain master. If it were anyone else, they wouldn't even be able to buy them, even with enough supreme spiritual liquid. Mu Chen nodded in understanding. He knew well that these divine beast essence bloods were not simple. 1 or 2 of these divine beasts ranked high on the divine beast list of the 10,000 beasts record. Essence blood from such high-tier beasts was rare and expensive, and gathering them was incredibly difficult. The auction houses only sold these to Mandala because of her status as a domain lord of the great Luo domain. If Mu Chen had gone, he would probably have returned empty-handed. Thank you. Mu Chen sincerely thanked her while gripping the jade vials. His objective had been to get Mandala to help him gather these divine beast essence blood, and it did feel somewhat like extortion. After all, as a person from the great Luo domain, he was supposed to assist Mandala, and he wasn't really in a position to ask for such a favor. But Mandala didn't seem to mind. In fact, she had put in the effort and resources to collect this essence blood. Over the past few days, she had been absent, and seeing her travel-worn appearance now, it was clear she had been busy running around the northern domain's major auction houses, collecting these divine beast essence bloods. Mu Chen couldn't help but feel a bit moved by her actions. Mandala, who had been somewhat displeased by the exhaustion of her travels, now appeared slightly flustered due to Mu Chen's sincere gratitude. In the great Luo domain, everyone showed her respect because of her status, and normal interactions were never as casual as the one she shared with Mu Chen. She could feel that Mu Chen didn't treat her as the domain lord of the great Luo domain, but rather just as a simple friend. This made her feel comfortable, and perhaps it was this feeling that caused her to overlook some of Mu Chen's offenses. But being inherently proud, she couldn't let her emotions show. She quickly straightened her face and said in a businesslike tone, "As a domain lord, when I say something, I will follow through. You helped me deal with Chiu Taiyin, and these are your rewards." Mu Chen smiled, not bothering to argue with the proud domain lord, and asked, "So, what about the issue with Chiu Taiyin?" At the mention of this, Mandala's face slightly darkened. "Just as I expected, the Xiantian Palace has planted quite a few spies in our great Luo domain. Chiu Taiyin is just one of them. However, we managed to get some names from him. Now, we just need to follow the trail and eliminate those with suspicious connections." Mu Chen nodded. "There are still about 2 months until the Grand Hunting War. Can you tell me more about it?" Mu Chen asked, looking at Mandala. Although he had heard a lot about the Grand Hunting War, he actually didn't know much about the specifics. Mandala glanced at Mu Chen, then lazily stretched before sitting beside him. She yawned and said, "There's really not much to say. The so-called Grand Hunting War is just a brutal survival of the fittest battle. Though the Northern Domain has many top forces, it's really just a situation where a bunch of wolves coexist, not one where a tiger leads hundreds of beasts. So, The Grand Hunting War is about wolves wanting to become tigers. Mu Chen's eyes flickered as he asked. There's no shortage of ambition in this world, Mandala replied indifferently. Only by unifying the northern domain can one stand out in the Tianluo continent and eventually become a hegemon in the Great Thousand Worlds. This is an unwritten rule of the northern domain. I don't know when it started, but once this rule is established, no one can break it. Because once it's broken, you'll have to fight against all other forces. So, the Grand Hunting War has been passed down this way. But even now, there hasn't been a tiger yet. However, I think this time, there might be one. At this point, a gleam of sharpness passed through Mandala's golden eyes. Mu Chen was slightly startled, staring at Mandala. Why? Do you know the location of the Grand Hunting War? Mandala tilted her head and asked. Mu Chen was taken aback for a moment before he nodded gently. The Fallen Battlefield? The Fallen Battlefield was a forbidden area in the northern domain. It was said that during the ancient times when the extraterritorial clans invaded the Great Thousand Worlds, they reached the northern domain and unleashed a war of apocalyptic proportions on this supercontinent. Today, the Fallen Battlefield was one of the remnants of that ancient battle. Countless top-tier experts perished here, and so, it was called the Fallen Battlefield, a name that hinted at the brutal and tragic nature of that war. The Fallen Battlefield was well known throughout the northern domain, as it contained the legacies of many powerful beings. Even the legacies of Earth's supreme-level super experts were numerous, attracting countless strong individuals seeking to obtain them. However, few of those who ventured into the Fallen Battlefield seeking treasure ever made it out alive. The area was notorious for its violent spiritual energy surges, like a volcanic eruption, with spiritual energy storms breaking out from time to time. Even Earth's supreme-level experts were wary of it. As more and more treasure hunters met their end there, the Fallen Battlefield became a notorious and forbidden place in the northern domain. Yes, the Fallen Battlefield, Mandala slowly nodded. In ancient times, some Earth's supreme-level experts perished there. The final goal of the Grand Hunting War is to claim the legacy of those fallen Earth Supremes. Mu Chen's eye sharpened. Do you know about spiritual divine liquid? Mandala asked again. Mu Chen shook his head in confusion. When an Earth's supreme-level expert perishes, their supreme C gradually erodes with the passage of time. When the erosion reaches its peak, it crystallizes into spiritual divine liquid. This liquid is the essence of the Earth's Supreme's power, Mandala explained, lightly licking her lips. When she spoke of the spiritual divine liquid, even her golden eyes gleamed with a hint of desire. The spiritual divine liquid is extremely beneficial for those of us who have reached the Earth's supreme level. But the spiritual energy storms in the Fallen Battlefield are terrifying. Only during certain times will those storms weaken, and that time is during the Grand Hunting War. The Divine Hall has already survived 5 Grand Hunting Wars. The leader of the Divine Hall is probably the person who has obtained the most spiritual divine liquid among all the top forces in the Northern Domain. And as far as I know, that person is currently at the peak of the Lower Earth Supreme level, even on the verge of reaching the Upper Earth Supreme level. If he manages to obtain more spiritual divine liquid this time, he will likely break through and reach the Upper Earth Supreme. Besides him, the leaders of other top forces, like the Netherworld Palace, also have the same potential. Mandala's face became serious as she said, once anyone attains the strength of an Upper Earth Supreme, there will be no one in the Northern Domain capable of stopping them. Upper Earth Supreme? Mu Chen frowned. The level of that realm was too distant and unfamiliar to him. Mandala glanced at Mu Chen helplessly and explained, there are different tiers even within the Earth Supreme realm. We divide it into 3 stages: Lower Earth Supreme, Upper Earth Supreme, and Perfected Earth Supreme. Each of these stages has a terrifying gap between them. Currently, in the Northern Domain, the leaders of the top-tier forces are all at the Lower Earth Supreme level. But if the Master of the Divine Hall manages to break through during this Grand Hunting War, things will get troublesome. Mu Chen's expression grew serious. So, this was the world of Earth's supreme powerhouses. He hadn't expected the gap between the stages of Earth Supreme to be so vast. From Mandala's words, he could also tell how terrifyingly attractive the spiritual divine liquid must be to these Earth Supreme level superpowers. The source of this brutal war, The Grand Hunting War was likely the spiritual divine liquid. I wonder which level of Earth Supreme Luo Li's grandfather is at. Mu Chen suddenly thought of Luo Heavenly God, whom he had met at the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. But based on his guess, Luo Heavenly God was likely stronger than Mandala. This Grand Hunting War will probably be the most thrilling one ever. Mandala smiled slightly. She raised her face, but there was no trace of fear in her golden eyes, only a burning battle intent. She gazed at the distant sky, her lips curling into a faint smile. Let's see who will break through this time. On the stone lion in the training field, Mu Chen watched Mandala, whose golden eyes, glowing in the sunlight, exuded a war-crazed aura. He couldn't help but shiver. He hadn't expected this seemingly lowly-like domain lord to have such a trace of madness in her. While other forces feared the Grand Hunting War, for her, it seemed like a hunting ground she eagerly sought. However, the other top-tier forces were no harmless lambs. These were ruthless powers capable of shaking the entire northern domain with a stomp. Mu Chen pursed his lips. Although the Grand Hunting War had not yet arrived, he could already sense the strong stench of blood. He didn't know which top-tier force would eventually be devoured and split apart in this war. But whoever it was, the aftermath would surely cause massive upheaval in the northern domain. A top-tier force's territory and resources were enough to make anyone envious. Mandala's fervor quickly faded. Her golden eyes turned to Mu Chen, and she suddenly smiled before asking, "Do you know of the ancient heavenly palace?" Hearing that name, Mu Chen's body jolted. He quickly looked up, his eyes filled with excitement as his heart raced. Wasn't his original purpose for coming to Tianluo continent with the Nine Nether precisely to find the so-called ancient heavenly palace? Because within that palace, there was another page of immortality, a treasure that would allow his great son indestructible body to evolve again. It seems you came to Tianluo continent because of the ancient heavenly palace, Mandala said with a faint smile. She glanced at Mu Chen and added, "Don't be so surprised. You have the great sun immortal body, so you must know some information about it." And indeed, the ancient heavenly palace holds what you're looking for. Mu Chen's eyes instantly grew fiery, his breath quickening. This was the first time in a year that he had confirmed this news. Although he still didn't know exactly what the ancient heavenly palace was, it was at least clear that he was in the right place. Tianluo continent indeed held what he needed. "Do you know where the ancient heavenly palace is?" Mu Chen couldn't help but ask Mandala. Mandala pursed her lips, then said, "The ancient heavenly palace is indeed hidden within Tianluo continent, but no one knows its exact location. From my guess, it's likely a sealed-off space, sealed by someone using powerful methods. Not even someone at the Earth Supreme level like you can detect it." Mu Chen frowned and asked. Mandala shot him an exasperated look and replied, "Even in ancient times, the ancient heavenly palace was a renowned force in the great thousand worlds. The palace's master could have reached the pinnacle of strength." Mu Chen awkwardly smiled, his heart filled with some sighs. Truly, in this world, there is always someone higher than the next. Although the existence of the ancient heavenly palace cannot be detected, in that fallen battlefield, a super-strong ancient figure from the ancient heavenly palace once fell. I think there might be some information about the ancient heavenly palace there. Mu Chen nodded. Though this news seemed a bit vague, it was still something, and certainly better than groping in the dark. His main objective upon arriving at the Tianluo continent was to obtain another page of immortality. Because Mu Chen knew very well that if he truly wanted to embark on the path of becoming an unparalleled powerhouse, this page of immortality would undoubtedly provide him with immense support. Once, one day, he could evolve his great sun indestructible body into the eternal undying body. Then he would truly have the qualifications to make his name known across the great thousand worlds. At that point, whether it was the Luo God clan or the mysterious clan where his mother came from, he would no longer need to fear them. "It seems that I really have to make a trip to the fallen battlefield," Mu Chen murmured to himself. Whether or not he could obtain information about the ancient heavenly palace, he had to give it a try, for that legendary, eternal, undying body. In the remaining 2 months, Mu Chen focused on training the 9 Nether Guards while also making use of his time to cultivate. The Grand Hunting War affected all of the top forces in the northern domain, and the scale of such a war would undoubtedly reach a terrifying level. Although Mu Chen was already considered a top figure in the great Luo heaven domain, he understood that for a war of such magnitude, his strength was far from enough. Once this war started, perhaps even Mandala wouldn't be able to look after everyone, so he had to improve his strength as much as possible before the Grand Hunting War began. However, he had only recently broken through to the 4th grade Supreme, and his spiritual energy was just stabilizing. It was clear that a rapid surge of power would not be suitable at the moment, so to improve his strength, he would need to use other means. For example, cultivating the dragon and phoenix scripture. Deep within the 9 Nether Palace, outside a desolate stone pool, Mu Chen sat cross-legged in silence, gazing at the stone pool in front of him. With a flick of his finger, 10 jade vials appeared before him. On the surface of the vials, glowing patterns shimmered, a simple seal, meant to contain the essence blood of divine beasts. Without the seal, the violent spiritual energy within would erupt in an instant. Mu Chen stared at the 10 jade vials, his expression becoming more solemn. Though he had obtained the legendary dragon and phoenix body within the dragon phoenix heaven, he knew well that his dragon and phoenix body was still in its very early stages. At best, it would only make his physical body stronger, but if he wanted to reach the level of possessing true dragon and phoenix power, it would require arduous cultivation. And right now, this was the first step. Mu Chen stripped off his robes, revealing his slender body, which, though not particularly muscular, exuded a terrifying power that anyone could sense. On his chest and back were the engravings of the true dragon and true phoenix. Mu Chen looked down at the patterns of the true dragon and true phoenix. He lightly touched them with his palm. These were not mere symbols. They gave off a strange, living sensation, almost as though they were alive. According to the dragon and phoenix scripture, cultivating the dragon and phoenix body is divided into 3 stages. The first stage is the activation of the true spirit. The second stage is transformation, and the third stage is the dragon and phoenix manifesting in the world. The patterns of the true dragon and true phoenix on Mu Chen's chest and back should be called the spirits of the true dragon and true phoenix, as they contain the lingering true spirits left behind by these beings. At this stage, Mu Chen needed to use the essence blood of many divine beasts to activate the true dragon and true phoenix spirits, thereby granting him even greater power. Once the true dragon and true phoenix spirits were fully activated, he would reach the transformation stage. At that point, the engravings of the true dragon and true phoenix would break free from his body, constantly changing, and begin to awaken the true powers of the true dragon and true phoenix. As for the third stage, the dragon and phoenix manifesting in the world, just the name alone gave away what it meant. What Mu Chen had to do now was the first stage, activate the true spirit. He took a deep breath and withdrew his gaze from the engravings. Without hesitation, he flicked his finger, sending a flash of spiritual light that shattered one of the jade vials. As the jade vial shattered, several drops of dark red, viscous blood suddenly fell from the air. However, as they dropped faster, the sound of crashing waves soon echoed through the space. The blood eventually fell into the enormous stone pool. Almost immediately, it began to expand at an astonishing rate. Within just a few breaths, those few drops of blood transformed into a rolling blood pool, surging within the stone pool. The violent spiritual energy and the strong scent of blood shot up into the air. Moreover, the blood was clearly extremely domineering. As soon as it was exposed, it began corroding the stone pool. Fortunately, Mu Chen had prepared in advance, and the stone pool was made from special materials, preventing the blood from eroding and dispersing. Truly worthy of the ancient 9-headed serpent's blood. Mu Chen gazed at the surging blood pool and couldn't help but sigh. Just a few drops of blood could turn into an entire blood pool. The 9-headed serpent truly deserved its place on the divine beast list. This divine beast's blood had not undergone any refinement, so it was filled with aggressiveness. However, this was exactly what Mu Chen needed. Only with this raw divine beast blood could he activate the true dragon and phoenix spirit. However, the process would undoubtedly be excruciating. Mu Chen stared at the swirling blood pool. He slowly clenched his hand into a fist, then without hesitation, He stripped off his clothes and leaped directly into the blood-red pool. Splash! Blood splattered as Mu Chen sat cross-legged in the blood pool, forming seals with his hands. Instantly, the blood pool began to churn, forming a crimson vortex. At the center of that vortex, Mu Chen sat in meditation. SSS. Countless hissing sounds echoed from the blood pool as it churned. The blood began to morph into small, blood-red nine-headed serpents, which viciously bit into Mu Chen's body. Mu Chen's body trembled violently as intense pain surged through him, turning his face pale. However, the excruciating pain didn't cause Mu Chen to lose his composure. He took a deep breath, then changed his hand seals and began to activate the Dragon and Phoenix scripture. As he activated the Dragon and Phoenix scripture, the true Dragon and Phoenix marks on his chest and back began to glow with faint spiritual light. Then, a deep dragon's roar and Phoenix's cry echoed through the air. To Mu Chen's surprise, the small blood-red nine-headed serpents were directly shattered, turning into blood threads that flowed incessantly along his skin, finally being devoured by the true Dragon and Phoenix marks without mercy. Although the ancient nine-headed serpent's blood was domineering, it was clearly inferior to the true Dragon and Phoenix spirit. Mu Chen knew, however, that the divine blood tempering had just begun. The golden light in the heavens gradually faded, and when it completely dissipated, the oppressive aura radiating from Mu Chen's body also completely retracted. He looked down at his chest and was momentarily stunned. There, under his skin, a miniature true dragon was swimming, as lifelike as a living creature. It looked as though a real dragon existed inside Mu Chen's body. Mu Chen's face was filled with astonishment. He hadn't expected the original dragon mark to evolve into this form after activation. Moreover, he could faintly feel that this miniature true dragon contained an extremely terrifying power. His gaze flickered slightly, and with a movement of his mind, the miniature true dragon swiftly followed his intent and moved toward his fist. His fingers clenched tightly, and with a punch, he struck out. Roar! With that punch, a loud dragon's roar reverberated throughout the heavens and earth. The space before him was violently shattered by Mu Chen's seemingly ordinary punch, cracks visibly spreading in the air. Hiss! Mu Chen couldn't help but suck in a cold breath as he saw the scene. This punch, which he had casually thrown while slightly channeling the miniature true dragon, unexpectedly unleashed such tremendous destructive power. After activating the Dragon Phoenix spirit, it was far more powerful than before. Swish! At that moment, Nine Nether's figure appeared before Mu Chen. She gazed with surprise at the miniature true dragon, which had returned to Mu Chen's chest. Her willow-like brows lifted slightly. As someone with a divine beast physique, she could faintly sense the imposing aura emanating from the miniature true dragon. That was the aura of a true dragon from the most authentic bloodline. Mu Chen sensed the true dragon moving beneath his skin and slightly shifted his expression. Nine Nether glanced at Mu Chen with a hint of confusion, but didn't ask further. She flicked her slender jade finger, and a sharp spiritual energy thread shot out, like a bolt of lightning, streaking toward Mu Chen's chest. However, Mu Chen didn't show any signs of defending against Nine Nether's attack. He didn't even maintain the spiritual energy on his body, allowing the energy thread to strike him directly. Sizzle! At the moment the energy thread hit Mu Chen's body, the true dragon spirit within his chest suddenly let out a low dragon roar, opened its mouth wide, and swallowed the incoming spiritual energy thread. After consuming the energy thread, the true dragon spirit merely shook its body slightly before returning to its peaceful movements beneath Mu Chen's skin. Nine Nether's face was filled with astonishment as she watched this. Mu Chen couldn't help but grin. Not only did the true dragon spirit provide him with immense strength, but it also had a protective function. Its defensive power was likely comparable to the Dragon Phoenix golden armor. If Mu Chen were to summon the armor again, combined with the defense of his physical body, these 3 layers of defense would likely make even a 5th grade Supreme have a tough time. If he had activated the true dragon spirit during his battle with Chiu Tain a month ago, he wouldn't have been forced to retreat into his Supreme Dharma body and set up a spirit array to counterattack. What exactly are you cultivating? Nine Nether couldn't hold back anymore and asked. Right now, Chen seemed even more like a divine beast than she did. Chen chuckled awkwardly, but didn't hide anything from her. He directly told her about the dragon and phoenix scripture. After hearing Chen's explanation, Nether was momentarily speechless. But soon, she furrowed her willow brows and fixed her gaze on the true dragon's spirit moving on Chen's chest. If you ever meet members of the Dragon Clan or Phoenix Clan, don't let them find out that you have the true dragon and phoenix spirit. Why? The dragon and phoenix clans are among the top divine beast races. Their strength is on par with the ancient god clans that have concealed themselves deeply. The true dragon and phoenix are the pinnacle of these two races. If they find out that you possess the true dragon and phoenix spirit, they might act arrogantly and forcibly extract it from you, Nether explained. Chen's expression shifted slightly. He hadn't expected the dragon and phoenix clans to be so domineering. Fortunately, his true dragon and phoenix spirit was still very weak, so it probably wouldn't attract their attention. But if this spirit were to reach its peak in the future, Chen didn't think he would be someone they could easily bully. I'll be careful, Chen nodded. Nether's expression softened, and just as she was about to speak, a loud, urgent bell sounded from deep within the great Luo heaven. The sound of the bell was somewhat hurried, and it carried a faint air of killing intent. Both Chen and Nether stiffened at the sound, their eyes narrowing as they looked toward the depths of the great Luo heaven. They knew it was the bell for convening the meeting of the kings, signaling the prelude to war. The war is about to begin, Chen murmured. In the great Luo heaven's main hall, the atmosphere was heavy and tense. The domain lord of Great Luo, the 3 sovereigns, the 10 kings, and even the leaders of several powerful subordinate forces were all gathered in the hall. This was the highest level of gathering in the Great Luo Heaven domain, which showed just how seriously they regarded the Grand Hunting War. One could say they were mobilizing everything they had. Chen sat on a stone seat in the hall, with Nether to his right. Other kings filled the seats along the way, while higher up were the 3 sovereigns and, overlooking everyone, the supreme Mandala. In the past, when attending such king meetings, Chen could only follow Nether and stand behind her like a bodyguard. But now, having become one of the kings of the great Luo Heaven domain, he naturally received the same treatment. The atmosphere in the hall was oppressive, and from the throne, Mandala looked down on everyone. Her youthful voice echoed, 7 days from now, the spiritual energy storm in the fallen battlefield will reach its weakest point. At that time, the Grand Hunting War will officially begin. Although everyone had been prepared for this, hearing those words made their eyes narrow, and their expressions grew more serious. Mandala waved her small hand, and instantly, spiritual light surged, forming an enormous and intricate spiritual energy map in midair above the Grand Hall. From the map's terrain, it appeared to depict the fallen battlefield, though most of it was in a dark region, suggesting it was an unknown location. Because of the spiritual energy storms within the fallen battlefield, the terrain changes drastically each time it is opened. The maps we once knew are mostly invalid. Once we enter the fallen battlefield, we'll have to rely on our own probes to navigate. Our army from the great Luo Heaven domain will enter from the northwest of the fallen battlefield. Once inside, the army will split up, each leading their own forces deeper into the battlefield to search for relics and seize fallen source pills. Fallen source pills. Chen was momentarily stunned, clearly unfamiliar with these so-called fallen source pills. Due to the unique nature of the fallen battlefield, any powerful being that perishes within it will have their supreme seed gradually weathered and refined over time, eventually forming the so-called fallen source pills. These pills are incredibly beneficial for cultivation, and they are also essential for unlocking the Earth Supreme's hidden treasures, Nether's voice gently explained, answering Chen's confusion. The Earth Supreme's hidden treasure is the place where Earth's Supreme level beings fall. However, such places are extremely secretive and protected by formations within the fallen battlefield. These natural formations are connected to the entire fallen battlefield, and even Earth's supreme powerhouses cannot break through them forcefully. The only way to bypass them is by using the fallen source pills because the power within them is of the same origin as the fallen battlefield itself. Therefore, seizing the fallen source pills is the first and most crucial step in the Great Hunting War. All factions will compete fiercely for these pills. To obtain as many fallen source pills as quickly as possible, we must split our forces. If the entire army moves in the same direction, it would only waste strength in unnecessary places. Chen rubbed his forehead and chuckled bitterly. The Great Hunting War certainly seemed troublesome. Given how important the fallen source pills were, the competition would undoubtedly be intense. Once we enter the fallen battlefield, I, along with the three sovereigns, will lead the way to search for the Earth Supreme's hidden treasure. As for the task of acquiring the fallen source pills, that will be up to you, Mandala said, her golden eyes turning to the 10 kings. So, no matter how you've competed for resources in the past, this time, I hope you can put aside all grudges and gaps and cooperate with each other. Otherwise, with your individual forces, it will be impossible to gather enough fallen source pills to reach our rendezvous point. Without enough fallen source pills, we won't be able to unlock the Earth Supreme's hidden treasure. At that point, we'll have effectively lost. And you should understand the consequences of that. Acquiring the fallen source pills will depend entirely on your strength. Even I and the three sovereigns won't be able to assist you at that point. We must focus on monitoring the top-tier forces of other factions to prevent them from striking at you. The kings looked at Mandala's golden eyes, filled with pressure and authority, and all of them respectfully nodded in agreement. Seeing this, Mandala waved her hand, and 10 rays of light shot out, landing in front of the 10 kings. The light faded, revealing 10 cyan copper mirrors. The surface of these mirrors seemed to shimmer with spiritual light. This is the spirit mirror. If you face imminent destruction, you can drop blood onto it. This will allow others to sense your location and come to your aid. I will also use the spirit mirror to inform you of the rendezvous point, Mandala explained. Chen and the others nodded, accepting the spirit mirrors and storing them away. Once all matters were settled, Mandala rose. Despite her small frame, she exuded an oppressive aura that made every powerful being in the hall hesitant to meet her gaze. Her golden eyes were filled with unyielding authority. Now, for the future of our great Luo Heaven domain, so that we can stand strong in the northern domain after this great hunting war. Everyone, let us fight. In the grand hall, all the powerful beings stood up abruptly, their eyes filled with fervor and battle intent.